Starting at the Spanish Grand Prix, after the eagle eyesight of Lewis Hamilton, or perhaps a note from his engineers, and all the way through the Monaco weekend, one of the biggest talking points in Formula One was flexible rear wings, and to a lesser extent, flexible front wings too. To take a look at that, I'm joined here at the Media and Technology Centre by Craig Scarborough. Now, Scarbs, this is not a small issue, is it?
It's not a small issue. I mean, this has been rumbling through Formula One since the 90s. There's been lots of ways of trying to sort this out. Lots of teams finding ways to try and work around the tests and the regulations. I think we've kind of got to somewhere now, potentially from the French Grand Prix onwards, where I think it can be actually monitored properly by the FIA.
And that's what's going to be a big change. At the French Grand Prix, the FIA are taking two major steps to stop flexible rear wings from, well, flexing as much as they are. They're doubling the load test on the rear wing. So the rear wing is pulled back by the scrutineers and pushed down to see if it deforms under load. So it starts to move around or flex or do anything untoward. But the other thing the FIA are doing for the first time is they're using F1 TV's onboard cameras which look back across the rear wing, and to see and really judge if the wing is moving, they've installed these yellow dots that you'll see on every single car. They're not always yellow, but on the Aston Martin it's quite obvious, so we chose to use this car to take a look at. And now these dots will be used as datum points, references, to see if the wing is moving under load as the car drives around the track. You should, in theory, be able to calculate how much the wing is moving, and that's something that the FIA will be taking a very keen eye on in France, but the rules aren't being changed until France, and Baku is the perfect track for a flexible wing, isn't it?
Absolutely, Baku, because the long straights, the slow corners, you want high speed and you want downforce. A flexible wing, I mean, this is really what they were designed for, and these are designed. This isn't by some chance that a wing, we have made it quite strong enough, therefore it flexes. You know, these are a huge amount of R&D to get them to work in just the way, while still meeting the regulations, which is absolutely the most important point. So the aims for what the teams are trying to design the wings around has changed, and this really is the perfect solution, the optical solution that we have here, because, well, for a start, we all spot the flexing wings from the onboard cameras, and when teams are testing their wings to see if they are flexing, whether they're designed to or not, they use exactly this system. So it is really the best way of doing it rather than solely relying on the load tests.
Now, something that the FIA have introduced with these new tests, a number of teams, Alfa Romeo, Red Bull Racing, a couple of others, they've all said that they're going to have to design completely new rear wing supports to make sure they're completely compliant with the regulations in France. Red Bull have claimed this will cost them $500,000 US. That sounds a little steep for me, but I don't know how much they pay their suppliers, but that does seem quite expensive. But under a cost cap, that is actually going to be a real concern for something they didn't plan for.
Yeah, it's a big issue for all of the teams. People could have a perfectly legal wing, one that really meets the spirit of the regulation, shall we say, but with such a big increase in the test, these wings are only built to be light and strong enough to meet the test and no more. Formula One cars don't carry, excess stiffness in parts like this, so they will have to redesign them, and that will cost money. And as you say, they don't have that money to play around with this year. So if they're going to have to redesign the rear wing, or potentially in the future the front wing, then that's money they can't spend somewhere else in improving the performance of the car.
Now, you mentioned front wing, and that was very clever of you there, Craig, because the front wing has been discussed, hasn't it? And we've been looking in free practice at some of the front wings on the cars, and there is a bit of movement there, and the same rules apply to the front wings that do to the rear wings. They have to pass through load tests, but all of the changes for France are aimed at the rear wing. Do you think we're going to see changes on the front wing test as well?
I would hope so. I mean, we've been looking at the onboards for so many years and seeing the front wings flexing down at speed, and nothing's been done. I mean, it's in plain sight with the nose cameras, and again, they've got the same solution. They already got load tests, but they could do an optical test on that trailing edge of the rear wing, which is really the part that's flexing, and that does reduce the drag. As much as we think front wings don't produce drag, they do. And also with that flexing, they also change the airflow around the car, which can equally increase aero performance. So I hope that this will then progress to maybe a new way of monitoring this sort of thing with optical systems rather than just static tests back in the pit lane.
Well, aeroelasticity, it's all about the elasticity of the regulations, and that's something I love about Formula One, how the teams of engineers compete against a team of rule makers to try and get a lap time advantage, and it's always going to be part of the sport, and I absolutely love it because of that. Aeroelasticity, flexible wings, we're going to be talking about this for a long time to come.